Good morning. As we go to the Chitas of today, we're holding the third portion in the portion of Nosai, second portion of the book of Leviticus. We're holding in the book of Leviticus. No, I'm sorry, book of Numbers, Bamidbar, chapter 5, verse number 1. And God, Moshe Lema, God spoke to Moshe saying, Tavis b'nei Yisrael, speak to the Jewish, command the Jewish people. Yishalchu min amachne, and they will send out from the camp called Tzarua, any person that has seiras, as leprosy, v'chol zav, any person that has a sickness of that runs from him, v'chol v'tamil nefesh, any person that's unclean because he came in contact with a dead person. Now she says, Sabbath Yisrael. Now she says this section of the Torah was said, this law was told to him on the day the Mishkan was erected. The Eibishter gave him this command. And there were 8 sections that were told to him on that day, as is stated in the Gemara of Gittin. At the time of the encampment, there were 3 camps. Within the hanging of the courtyard of the Mishkan was the camp of the Shekhinah. That's where the God, so to say, rested in the Shekhinah, in the Beis Hamikdash. The encampment of the Levites surrounding it was the Levites surrounded the Beis Hamikdash. As described in the portion of Bamidbar, was the Levite camp, and there until the age of the camp of the divisions. All 4 sides was the Israel camp. They were divided into each group of 3, as we mentioned before. One with discharge was allowing into, so one with a discharge person or zav was allowed into the Israeli camp, but banned from any other 2 from the Levite camp and the camp of the going to Beis Hamikdash. One defiled by a dead body was permitted even into the Levite camp, was not allowed into the Beis Hamikdash, and it is banished only from the camp of the Shekhinah. As the sages derive all this from the verse it appears in the tractate of Psachim. So there were different. A Matzeda needed to go out of all 3 camps. Tamil nefesh. Now she said, "Taigunum," which is the misava l'tmal nafsh denasha. I believe the word tamei is Aramaic human bones. Tamei. There are many such examples in the Bereshis Rabbah, such as shik timia, meaning may his bones be grounded to the dust. So the impurity of the skeleton of the bones. Whether he's a man or a woman. He shall be banished, sent out from the send him out from the outside the camp. And they shouldn't defile the camps, which I'm resting in their midst. Vayasu came, Bnei Yisrael, the Yidden did that. And they sent out, when Amachne, they sent out from the camp, Kol Tzarua, they sent them out of the camp. Kashatziva Hashem es Moshe, which God commanded Moshe, Kain os b'nei Yisrael. This is what the Jewish people did. Verse number 5. God spoke to Moshe saying, Dabba b'nei Yisrael, speak to the Jewish people, Isha, a man or a woman, which will do any sins against man, to be treacherous against God, and that person will be found guilty. Now she says this pasuk comes to teach us, repeats a section dealing with a thief who swears falsely, which is stated in the Parashat Vayikra, and acts treacherously against God by falsely denying to his fellow. He lied under law, under an oath. It is repeated here because 2 new matters are introduced. The first is written, they shall confess, which teaches us that that he, the thief, is not required to pay a fifth and bring a guilt offering when incriminated by 2 witnesses until he admits to the deed himself. So that's when a person has to bring a guilt offering when he openly admits to his sin. Then he brings a carbon. But if he's condemned by witnesses, he doesn't. He never confessed. He has to pay back because against his will, because there's two witnesses. So there has to be the constant admittance vidui. The second matter is when he's stolen from a proselyte. When you stole from a ger, you have nobody to give it back to, because he has no inheritors. Then you give it back to. They give the money to the kohen. Then, if he confesses to the sin that he has done, then he has to make restitution the principal amount, and then add a fifth to the principal amount that he's giving. And he gives it to the one who is guilty, the one who he lied to. And Rashi says, this is talking about the principal amount. He has to pay back the principal amount, and then he has to give back a fifth to the one who is liable, the one he owes the money to. And if the man has no kinsman to whom to make the restitution, that means if a situation where the guy he owns the money to has died, so usually he gives it back to his inheritors. If he doesn't have an inheritor, he gives it back to the kohen. Besides that, he has to bring a carbon. He has to bring a sacrifice for atonement. Which he brings his atonement through it. Rashi says, for a claimant who made him swear has died and there's no heirs, and which in this one decides to confess his sins. I would say, is there a man in Israel who doesn't have a kinsman, doesn't have a relative, either a son, a daughter, a brother, or some other relative from his father's family, all the way back to Yaakov Avinu? Is it possible? You have to have somebody in your family, your father's family, whether it's a cousin, great uncle, whatever, far out cousin from your father's side. So there has to be somebody that every person has a relative. Rather, it's referring to a ger, a convert, who died, leaving no heirs. He had no children. So his family is not considered in this law his family, because he converted. So now he is, as the Torah says, a proselyte, a ger, is considered like a newborn, without a relationship prior to this conversion. So who do you give the money if you want to do tshuva? So you give it to the kohen. So that Ashem Amusha. Rashi says this refers to the principal and the fifth. You take the principal and the fifth, Lashem La Kohen. You give it to the kohen. The God assumes ownership and gives it to the kohen on that watch, the kohen on the watch at that time. Besides that, he has to bring a carbon, which is mentioned in the portion of Vayikra, which he requires to bring. Verse number 9. Every offering of all the children of Israel, which will bring from the holy things, which he brought to the kohen, lo yiyah shall be his. Now she says, Rabbi Shmuel said, is a truma brought to the kohen? Does he go around the garneries seeking for it? So what does the clause that brought to the kohen mean? Because we know that that we brought it to the kohen, or the kohen, we had ultimately the Ezra established that there was a store, the kohen store, so to say. The kohen came to a certain place. So what is the meaning of this? That the kohen, sounding like the kohen, brings it. These are the first fruits. So that's what Asher did, the first fruits of which it stated, you shall bring to the house of the Lord your God. But I did not know what to do with them. So I bring all this fruit, bikurim, which is this yantiv. Tonight is Shavuos, which is also the mitzvah of bikurim, bringing the first fruits of the Beis Hamikdash. It goes all to the kohen. Torah teaches us regarding the first fruits that they're given to the kohen. So Yutaka brought it to the Beis Hamikdash. What did they do with all that fruit? They gave it to the kohen. Everyone a holy thing shall belong to him. Whatever man gives to the kohen shall be his. She says, what does it mean? Lo yiyah, it shall be his. Since the Kohen and the Levite gifts are explicitly stated, one might think that they can come and appropriate them forcefully. The Kohen can come into my house. The Levi can come into my house and take stuff. Therefore, the Torah says everything holy belongs to him, belongs to the person. The person can give it to everyone he wants, any Kohen he wants to give it to, which informs that their benefit to give them to whichever Kohen it pleases him belongs to the owner. And the Kohen is not allowed to come and grab Tumah. This was the sages introduced many explanations, clause in the Sifri. In the Agada, teaches us another lesson. Everyone's holy thing belongs to him means if one withholds this tithing and does not give them to the Kohen or the Levi, those child shall be his, for eventually his fields will produce only 1/10 of its usual yield. Therefore, the Torah tells us actually, whatever you get in life is all because of the maisi you give to the Kohen or the Truma maisi. So you have to deduce, and in essence, how much you want to make this year is how much tzedakah you're going to give this year. So according to how much tzedakah you're going to give, that's how much 90% you're going to gain. It doesn't go the other way around. That how much you make, you give 10% from it. It's actually from the 10% to how much you're going to make. So if you give $100 this year, you're going to make $1,000. If you give $200, you're going to make $2,000. It's all depend lo yiyah. All depends on how much you give to the Kohen. That's why there's not amount that you can give. You can give a little, you can give a lot. And it all depends your success in life and how much you're going to give to the Kohen and to the Levi. The gifts which he is entitled, lo yiyah shall be to him much wealth. The more you give to the Kohen, the more you give to the Levi, the more wealth you're going to have. And that completes the Chumash for today. Now we go to the Alter Rebbe, the Tanya, that we're going to end today, the 53rd chapter of Tanya, which in a way we're going to end today, the Tanya, the first part of the Tanya, the 53 chapters of Tanya. The Alter Rebbe now concludes with what he began with in chapter 51, concerning the statement of the Yunka in the Zohar, that the light of the Shekhinah, which shines above the head of a person, needs oil. The Yunka means the young one, concludes that these are good deeds. The oil is the performance of the mitzvahs. So the performance of the mitzvah, the more mitzvahs I do, the more good deeds, the more oil I have. Hasidic literature, however, oil traditionally refers to wisdom. What is the connection between the performance of mitzvahs and wisdom, which is called oil? So we see we have two different expressions to oil. Oil is wisdom, oil is mitzvahs. That explains that the light of the Shekhinah must garb itself in wisdom, which is oil. As previously explained, wisdom or intellect is the vessel and the garment for the light of the Shekhinah, which is the Chachma, as is garbed in Torah. Dvar Hashem du halacha, that halacha is the place of the source where the Shekhinah resides. We mentioned that's a learning Torah. In order to draw down the light of the Shekhinah, so that it will shine upon the divine soul of a Jew, more than oil is necessary. One must also have a wick. Oil is transformed into light through the medium of a wick. It is the wick, which itself is burned, which keeps the fire from being extinguished. In spiritual terms, the wick refers to the vivifying soul, which provides the person with physical life. That's why it's important to have a healthy wick. This wick is burned through Torah mitzvahs. Just as a physical burns and is annihilated by the fire, so do the garments of thought, speech, and action of the vivifying soul becomes burned in the light of the Shekhinah through Torah mitzvahs, which a Jew studies and performs. It's for this reason that the oil must also consist of good deeds, mitzvahs, which are their source in the godly wisdom. Torah alone, even though it's like wisdom, does not suffice, for only through action required by mitzvahs will the light of Shekhinah drawn down into the wick which is the vivifying soul. This is accomplished when the vivifying soul is burned through the light of the Shekhinah, which shines on one's head. And that's how you have the whole package together. You have the wick, you have the fire, you have the oil. You need all three entities to be able to have a candle. When we started off in chapter 51, we said that the concept of the Oir Neshama is the fire. Your wick is your body, your nefesh habahamis, your nefesh hasichlis, and your oil is the Torah you learn and the mitzvahs you do. And this is what the Yunker said in the Zohar. He meant with the supernal light that is kindled on the head of a Jew. Every Jew has a fire upon his head. Namely, the Shekhinah, Shekhinah, the fire is the Shekhinah. It's the Mishra. This fire needs to have oil. Pirush, Slavish bechachma, that is, it clothes itself in wisdom. Hanikah Shemen Mishchas Kodesh, which wisdom is called the oil of the holy anointing. Kamashakasav, the holy signifies chachma or wisdom. Kamashakasav is Zayar, as brought down in Zayar. Thus, the light of the Shekhinah, which is upon one's head, is in need of oil, meaning it must be garbed in wisdom through learning Torah, learning especially halacha, Torah shebal peh, the oral law. For this is the vessel for the light of the Shekhinah. So the only way I can bring about the light of the Shekhinah to shine upon my head, that it continues shining, is through the oil, is through learning Torah. And especially, as we learned before, halacha. That Dalal Amashallah, where the Shekhinah reside, is in the Dalal Amashal halacha. So what is the capability for the Shekhinah, for the light, to continue, is when I learn Torah, I give it oil. The Zohar then quotes the conclusion of the statement of the Yunker, V'inen avdin tuvin. And these are the good deeds, which my learning brings to. And Tayag mitzvahs, which is the 630 commandments, which is derived from the wisdom of God. The Torah, which is the oil, does not suffice. There must be good deeds, the performance of mitzvahs. Although they are only drawn down through wisdom. Why? Thereby the light of the Shekhinah can cling to the wick. Because we need to have the wick. And therefore the mitzvahs connect the Shekhinah, which comes down through Torah, to the wick. Because the wick, is the vivifying soul in the body. Which metaphorically is called the wick. Just like in the case of material candle. That the wick, the fire burns in virtue of the annihilation of the burning wick, turning into fire. So do the light of the Shekhinah rest on the divine soul, which is the candle, the soul of man and God, is a result of the annihilation, spiritual annihilation of the animal soul, and the transforming of the darkness into light, and the transformation of bitterness into sweetness. But tzaddikim, in the case of the righteous people, for tzaddikim, as mentioned in chapter 10, are those who transform the essence of the animal soul, its intellect and emotion, from evil into goodness and holiness. Or at least through the destruction of the destruction of the garment, which is thought, speech, and action. Which over here, destruction doesn't mean destruction, it means transformation. Which previously were garments of the vivifying soul, which were klippa, which transforms from the darkness of klippa to the divine light of God. So through that, I've changed my nefesh abamis. I've, so to say, annihilated him. Which is in the thought, speech, and action of the 613 commandments, in the case of a middleman that cannot transform it totally. So a Beinoni, as explained in chapter 12, do not transform the essence of the vivifying soul into goodness and holiness. Only the soul garments of thought, speech, and action are transformed to goodness by being utilized for the sports, thought, speech, and action of Torah and mitzvahs. In this case, the wick of the vivifying soul is annihilated and transformed into the light of holiness, the thought, speech, and action. The result of transforming the animal soul by a bein, thought, speech, and action, by a tzaddik, the animal soul itself, which originated in Klippas Nega, Sheikh from darkness into light of holiness. There's a brought about so-called an ascent of the feminine waters. That's the Avodas Adam, the ascent of the lower waters to the upper waters. The spiritual awakening on the initiative of a recipient, which in turn causes an arousal from above. To draw down the light of the Shekhinah, not only like the oil of Chachma of Torah, which is but a vessel for receiving the light of Shekhinah, but actually draws down the light of the Shekhinah when we transform darkness into light. Al Nafish Alakisha and the revealed light of Ein Sof over the divine soul, principle of the dwelling of the brain, the head. So that's why there's a greater revelation of godliness, even that he had even before he accomplished this mission. This is why the Yunker said, the supernal light is kindled over one's head requires oil. For the light that is above one's head and intelligence is need of the oil of good deeds. Because if it does come into Chachma, it doesn't transform darkness. The only way it can transform darkness is if it connects to darkness. If it ultimately transforms your thought, speech, and action, which is Maisa HaMitzvahs, which is ultimately to bring it down into a physical reality. This will understand Mashakasa, what the verse says, Hashem Elekecha Eish Eichlahu. For the Lord your God is a consuming fire. What does that mean? Just as fire can only catch on an object when the object is being consumed by it. Because once it consumes that object, there's no fire anymore. So it needs to have something that fire in this physical world needs to have something to consume. So to regard in light of the Shekhinah, in order for God to become your God, Elekecha. How does God, Ki Hashem Elekecha, illuminating the Jewish soul? It must be a consumption by fire. Eish Eichlahu. The fire must consume, so to say, you. Burning and annihilating the wick, which in this case is elevating your animal soul. Burning your animal soul. Using your animal soul and transforming your thought, at least your thought, speech, and action. That my thought, speech, and action should be for godliness. So that the soul of Klippa be transformed into fire of holiness. Meshakosov b'makamacha, as I explained also in other places elsewhere, that only when a Jew succeeds in nullifying himself to God in a manner where he ceases to exist as an independent entity and is consumed in the flames of godliness, only then will he draw down upon himself the light of the Shekhinah. Nishlam Chelek Rishon, we have concluded the first part of the Tanya, first 53 chapters of Tanya. Be'ezus Hashem Yisbarach, with the help of God, B'Yisala, may he be blessed and exalted. Mazel Tov to the learning together of the first 53 chapters of Tanya. Congratulations to us all. And in Mir Hashem, we should have all Kabbalah Satayra as we go in to receive the Torah. We should all receive the Torah, as the Rebbe would always say, Kabbalah Satayra b'simcha, with great joy, b'pnimius, in an inner way, which our learning of Chassidus taught us how to have a Kabbalah Satera B'Pnimis, that we should all receive the Torah in an inner way. So congratulations to all that we have completed together the first 53 chapters of Tanya. Today is the 5th day of the month, which is chapter 29 to chapter 34. If you do those 6 chapters of Tilim, you would have done the Chitas of the day. Amid Shem, I hope all of you, I wish you all a good Yontiv, and I hope that all of you will learn the Chitas, Amid Shem, tomorrow, and after tomorrow, on Thursday, we'll come together on Friday again at 8 a.m. to continue to learn the Chitas of the day. I wish you all a good Yontiv, a wonderful Yontiv, a happy Yontiv, a Yontiv of great joy and to the world, and the Eibush should bring Yom Tov, the Eibush should bring a good day and a happy day for the entire Jewish nation. And I hope you all will be in Shul to hear the Aseres HaDibros, the 10 Commandments tomorrow. Hayom Me'elu, these days, Niskarim V'Nasim, these days are remembered, V'Nasim, they're redone. So we're going to all merit again to receive the Torah again tomorrow. Amir Hashem, all in Shul, Amir Hashem, wherever you are around the world. And you'll all come to Shul and be in Shul to hear the 10 Commandments and to be at Mount Sinai again. God bless you all. Have a wonderful and beautiful